Saludos, invocadores, and welcome to Patch Rundown 5.6. If you haven't yet, read the patch notes. They're probably here. They're most likely here, but I'm going to guess here. I have with me my guests, lead of live gameplay, Brian Feeney, also known as Feralpony, and Aiden Zirene Moon, the lead Zirene for the LCS Analyst Desk. Thank you guys.
And my favorite Zirene.
Oh,
too.
and your favorite Zirene.
Thank you.
I don't know if he's my favorite Zirene, but we'll see by the end of this episode. Thank you guys for showing up.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to you, Zirene, immediately because Brian Feeney doesn't know anything about the jungle. Last patch we released Cinderhulk.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, well, yeah, apparently you do love that item. Okay, so there was a lot of criticism, especially last time from chat, right? It's like junglers are in a really bad spot. There's not many junglers that I can play, right? Like 5.5 had a number of notable changes. How is the jungle for you feeling right now?
Right now it feels really great, and it feels like I can play a lot of different champions there. Like I can go play an AP like Nidalee or Fiddlesticks. I can go play a tank jungler and have a lot of success on them. Maybe a little too much sometimes. But also, you can still play the Rek'Sai, you can still play the Jarvan and the Lee Sin. And you have trade-offs, right? Like you have early game versus the late game of the tank. So I think it's hitting that diversity. I just think that tank junglers are a little stronger than they should be in comparison to the others now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few especially that were sort of above the rest of the pack before Cinderhulk, which I think did a really great job of shoring up some of their mid-game clear problems, some of the sort of the mid-game weakness. Like they've always had early game weaknesses. That's intentional and probably a really healthy spot for them to be in.
Right.
We had suspicions that some of these characters like Sion and Sejuani were going to do very well in the new system, but it's hard to predict exactly how well, and so we wanted to let things shake out a little bit before making any kind of jumps on some of these characters. And we've seen in the patch, those two characters in specific are a little bit too strong. We have small nerfs for both of those guys coming in, but we want to give a little bit more time to see how the jungle shakes out. Right? People are going to be trying new things. Even now, people are still trying new junglers. They're still innovating. They're still doing adjustments.
Yo,
and
Zach just got played in the LCS.
Exactly, right? Like,
Awesome.
I thought you were like, oh no.
I know, that's awesome.
no,
Yeah,
he was like really cool to see, for example, right? And like that's one of those characters that we saw without necessarily even doing like a lot more like powerful buffs to. Like we did a small tweak there, and people are still adjusting and innovating and trying new things, which is really, really cool to see. And that being said, we still have a few additional jungle changes coming out this patch. Primarily targeting stuff like late game experience of junglers, right? Who are sort of, if they're doing well in the early or mid game, we've seen pretty much universally they sort of fall behind in levels, fall behind in power in the late game, and want to make sure that that's addressed regardless of each individual character's current state.
Right. So, what leads us to making changes that are just huge? Like what is really leading us to use the hammer when we need to use something else?
Sure. So a couple things kind of come into play here. Each story and each kind of case is pretty unique. I think in Azir's case, that dude is just the most complicated champion like in kind of existence for a number of cases, like just both like, mechanically, both in how the character functions. There's really no one else
how to
similar.
Play is super,
right?
super intense to use.
And so any amount of actual change that like we playtest the crap out of the champion internally, but that's nothing compared to 30 minutes on the live servers, right? And so champions like that, I think it's actually very easy to sort of over or undershoot. And so you also see this with new champions sometimes as well, where like we have generally like the top tier players who are spending, weeks and weeks, if not months, working on a specific champion. Like Bard was an example of this, right? Where the character is just so mechanically complex, like so unique, and like just he's so different.
Yeah.
And then on release, like, everyone's like, what do I do with this champion?
So then are we okay with changing characters over a number of patches? Because as much as the balance team has been criticized for, like, you guys go too hard on characters, you nerf too many things at once, right? Yeah. There's also been a criticism in characters. I think most recently one is like Lucian, where it was like this character is strong and it feels like you just keep picking at them over patches. Do we prefer that approach? Is that approach okay?
We should. I definitely think that should be the approach to it, because when you hit things too hard, it goes down so drastically that people get so frustrated with those champions, whereas small power creep types of things are, in my opinion, healthier. Like you look at Kennen, he's been buffed kind of slowly, and then he's in a good spot. It also happened a little bit with Lissandra, where she just kept getting small buffs, quality of life changes, and then it's like, whoa, Lissandra, out of nowhere, everybody's playing it. And I think that's better than huge buffs at once or huge nerfs at once, because it's too much sometimes.
Yeah, so I want to get your feeling on the stuff that is happening in the jungle, right? We have, if I am correct, Elise, Evelynn, Nocturne, and Rammus, and some XP stuff. they feel a little light, but they feel like they might be in the right direction. I don't know. How do you feel?
I feel like having the tiny changes is the way to go with it, and just kind of just push it up little by little. So I don't know if they will be enough. I feel like Elise might need a little more loving. I feel like Nocturne, he's actually gotten some buffs over time, like the E tether fear, you move faster towards the target,
Right,
and
yeah.
now this. So a lot of people are going to pick up Nocturne again and be like, oh yeah, I haven't played him since he's gotten that buff to his E, and he's going to feel a lot better. He's going to have more early game pressure. So overall, I think that these are good changes since they are tiny buffs to just push those characters in the right direction, and then just have people explore with it. Because people are going to play Evelyn again and be like 3 seconds to go re-stealth and then come back again and reopen on people is pretty big. Right? Like that's just a play pattern thing. And then when people pick the champion up again, this might make them a little more alluring. And then when they do, they're like, wow, this champion's stronger than I thought. Because it's about perception too.
Right. It's not just about, I mean, perception is huge in this case, but like also there's some of these characters like, Evelyn especially, used to get the crap kicked out of her in the jungle right before that, and we did the damage reduction buffs that actually helped out champions like her almost disproportionately to some of the other characters. And so you're seeing a bunch of these ecosystem changes on top of small incremental champion changes, I think can have massive impact, and I think in general that is a pretty good direction to go, just like smaller stuff and kind of see how things shake out, but that's not always the best play. Yeah. Like Cinderhulk, for example, was not a small change. Like that was pretty massive, and I think if we had gone with the approach of like, let's just do small incremental changes to every tanky or kind of tanky jungle dude who wants health in any kind of way, right? Like it would have taken us forever to get there and would have caused a lot more disruption, a lot more kind of like probably negative ramifications than we wanted to. Whereas if we just go, hey, here's Cinderhulk, like be rampaging, fire spewing monsters, right? Like, that's super awesome, and we get the kind of changes that we want to see, and we diversify things a lot. We see people trying out new stuff. I think it's a really healthy and good direction.
Yeah. I think that it's great to see like the late game tank junglers who are bad early, and then you have people who are like, I'm going to play Lee Sin still and Jarvan because they have their place. And like early game pressure, not as great as a tank jungler late game, but you transition into that. And then you still have things like AP Nidalee, which I think is a little powerful, but I still think it's a good thing to have in the game at the moment so that people can be like, there is an AP jungler to play. We need more things like this, and to be like, it's okay to have that poke pattern. We want more of that.
Yeah,
right.
That was going to be my next question. Now that you bring her up, is you say, we are taking a wait and see approach, right? We're trying to do things, that, kind of little by little here, right? Yeah. And yet it feels like we're almost ignoring something like Nidalee, which many of our players agree. That character is in a state, she's very visible and she's very powerful, and we're not really doing anything to her.
So, to be totally blunt, Nidalee's still on the radar as a character that we're looking at. It seemed we knew how much of an impact Cinderhulk was going to have. We didn't know quite exactly how much it was going to know, but we knew it was going to be big. And so it was felt a little bit irresponsible to be like trying to target nerf specific champions in the jungle when we're also boosting a ton of other champions in the jungle at the same time.
Right. So are we moving forward, if you look at 5.5 and 5.6, are we just going to buff forever? Are we about that life? Like, what's going on?
I mean, I think you want to use both always, right? Like there is a bar of where things are at. Some things are above that bar, some things are below that bar, and you want to be able to use both tools at your disposal. I think sometimes we definitely err too heavy in one direction or the other, and I think we can be doing both, right? And that's actually good. But I think ultimately, regardless of whether we're buffing or nerfing, the most important thing in my mind is that we're being targeted and we're pushing the game always in a better direction, whether that's through buffing a character or even nerfing a character.
So if we're nerfing a character or if we're buffing a character, even though there might be a risk of maybe we move too far, maybe we don't go far enough, as long as the end result is a place we want the game to be at, then we're fine to make those changes.
I mean, we patch all the time, right? So that's one of those things where, like, if we're a little bit off on sort of, on a balance number, or like characters are a little bit too powerful, a little bit too weak, we can adjust that in the following patch, following 2 patches. Like, we adjust the game very rapidly. However, if we're not pushing the game always in a better direction, then we're not really making progress.
Okay, awesome, guys. Thank you for coming over and talking about the changes with me. That is it for 5.6. For myself, Feralpony, Zirene, and everyone here at the crew, we'll see you next time, hopefully with the real Zirene.